Let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
Only thing that matters is 2026, taking back the House of Representatives.
Newsom just said that the only thing that matters is 2026 and the House taking back the Congress. But I would say, why? They don't pass legislation. No one's passing legislation. Unless your goal is to just impeach President Trump again.
It would help if they gave their agenda besides affordability. Well, how are you going to make things affordable? Midterm mania. Trump has a plan as Republicans' margin forever shrinks as they lose another congressional Republican, and Dems' divide grows.
Number 2.
It turns out Americans like what they deem to be successful foreign policy operations. And in this case, they view the ousting of Maduro, at least up to this point, as a successful one, and therefore the support way up.
Yeah, it doubled. Venezuela first, Greenland next. We discuss the Trump agenda and what it means for America.
Number 1.
Answer these tough questions, quit hiding behind this, and expect for the next 11 months for me to ride you like you've never been ridden, to make sure that you're doing your job. I'm not going anywhere.
Wait a second.
You can make all your requests for me to resign over my dead body.
You're going to, wait. So you're going to get mad at the people asking you to resign because of your horrible running of the state and because of a scandal that you oversaw? Major media fraud, KO's Walz, and is about to descend on Newsom. Fraud is front and center. I think the midterm should be about that if I'm a Republican. Karl Rove joins us now, who is a Republican and a Fox News contributor. Karl, what do you think? Should fraud now be something Republicans run on intensely?
Well, in Minnesota for certain, but you have to have evidence of it elsewhere, and there's probably, the GAO, the General Accounting Office, estimates the amount of fraud in the federal budget is in the hundreds of billions of dollars. So there's plenty of opportunities, but I've never seen anything as astonishingly large and well organized as the fraud that we're seeing on the state level with these COVID programs and child programs that have been systematically looted by some well organized, apparently, groups of left-wing activists. And so, yes, it's going to be an issue, but right now it's Michigan. Let's see how much further it goes.
Yes, we know Minnesota. Yes, right now it's Minnesota. I think Maine is going to be huge. Washington State is huge, and they say California is the mother lode. So we'll see where that goes and what it unveils. Because I think you're going to have some Republican candidates like Ro Khanna who said, "I want to get to the bottom of fraud." So it's not going to be Gavin Newsom. Let's protect him. Some of these Democrats look at him as a potential opponent. Don't you think that plays into this?
Yeah, I think it does to some extent. You mentioned you had accidentally referred to Ro Khanna as a Republican the first time you mentioned it. But, yes, he's a Democrat. He has got ambitions in 2028, and he knows that there can't be multiple people from California. And this may be a way to take out or at least dust up Gavin Newsom because, look, we knew this during COVID. Remember all the people in prisons who got COVID money in California because they had these rings inside the prison that figured out how to abuse these federal programs. So yeah, this is going to be an issue this year. Starting in Minnesota, we'll see where else it goes.
If you are a Republican and if Klobuchar runs for governor, which it looks like she might, that would open up that seat. Is there a Republican that would have a shot at that seat that you might know offhand?
Well, the seat doesn't come open. She is in the midterm. So she gets a free run for governor, keeping her Senate seat. And if she were to be elected governor, she would name her own replacement. She would resign from the Senate sometime after winning the governorship if she were to win. And then as being sworn in as governor, she would be able to replace herself. She probably would not do that. She'd probably do it, simultaneously. She would want to leave Tim Walz with the idea that he could appoint himself to the U.S. Senate.
Right. How many years does she have left? Do you know?
I want to say that she's got 4 years left.
Okay.
But it may be 2. Yeah.
All right. So we look at the generic ballot at the midterms. It's 36-34. Excuse me. Yeah. It's a 4-point separation between the two. Tell me what the game plan should be for Republicans to close that gap.
Well, there are actually 2 gaps. You're talking about
46,
one
42.
which is close.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're talking about one that's close, and that's the generic ballot gap. And the difficulty in applying that to the House races in particular is is that we have so many districts in the country that are solidly R or solidly D, and a relatively more modest number of seats where that generic ballot is going to matter because, for example, a district might be, like Michigan 7, Tom Barrett won by 4 points last time around. That's going to be a seat where a 4-point advantage to the Democrats in the generic ballot could matter. The more problematic gap is the enthusiasm gap, which also tends to be more variable. The generic ballot tends to move slowly, but enthusiasm among each side's adherents tends to move a little bit faster and a little bit more erratic. And there's where the Republicans have got a problem, because today the Democrats have a significant advantage on the enthusiasm measure. Democrats are far more enthusiastic about turning out to vote. We've seen it in every one of the 2025 special elections, even the ones that we won. Tennessee 7. District that Donald Trump won by 21, and Markwayne, the congressman, won by 20. And we're lucky to get a Republican member of Congress in that district in the special election by 9 points, running against a total lunatic. I mean, this woman the Democrats put up could easily have been a great candidate for the Democratic Socialists in New York City, but in Clarksville, Tennessee, she wasn't exactly very popular. Abolish the police, et cetera. Were not exactly, sort of routine, but the Democrat enthusiasm showed up, and as a result, a district that we won by, 20 to 21, we won by 9.
But if you want to know about the divide in the Democratic Party, don't have to wait anymore. All of a sudden, you have Dan Goldman, a lefty liberal, who's being challenged by another socialist, Brad Lander, and supported by the 34-year-old mayor of 1 week, Mayor Zondani, taking on the governor, who's supporting the other Democrat, Dan Goldman. This is just the beginning. Remember, Keem Jeffries had to fend off which was about to be a primary challenge. The socialists going after the Democrats, that can't be healthy for a party.
No, not at all. In fact, this is the opening. This is the opening part of this whole war, and it's going to go on till 2028. I mean, we're back to a more emotional and, if you will, divisive time that we had in the Democratic Party leading up to the 1992 nomination. You remember the Democrats had lost under Mondale, Jimmy Carter in 1980. Mondale gets one state in 84. Michael Dukakis gets his clock cleaned in 88. And the Democrats were divided. And ironically enough, Bill Clinton stood up and attacked a prominent Democrat, black activist, and crystallized that the Democratic Party had to make a decision. Was it going to go to continue to go left, or was it going to try and claw its way back to the center?
And we know they went to the center, and now Bill Clinton would not even be nominated in that party anymore. Venezuela.
Exactly.
Let's talk about Venezuela. The operation was a flawless War Department operation. Nobody denies that. So the president says, I don't want a new government in there. I'm going to keep it the shell there. I don't want to pick up the garbage. I don't want to write the checks, government checks. Keep the trains running. And this vice president, now that she's president for now, should listen to me. So your thoughts?
Well, I know he's concerned about regime change, but there's no way that we're going to get American oil companies to invest in Venezuela as long as Maduro's gang is still in power. These are people who've systematically looted the country. And with all due respect to the president, this was an enormously successful operation. And he has enormous sway over the Venezuelans. But this thing is not going to change for the good over the long haul until there is a change in government. The good news is he's got time to bring that around. There's no need, he's probably correct. Marco Rubio is probably correct that there's no alternative today to having the vice president in charge. But let's remember, she's a thug. She helped all of the bad things that we blame on Maduro. She and the interior minister and the defense minister were all part and parcel. Her brother is running the national. He's like the speaker of their house. He's running the National Assembly. These are a group of communist thugs who loot the country for their own personal gain and suppress freedom and liberty. And that's going to have to at some point end, but we shouldn't expect it to end today. And The president has to have leverage over them. Let's give him time to execute the plan and trust in the Secretary of State to be able to guide it.
I don't want to use stereotypes, but when I think of Texas, I think of oil. I think you're in Texas, so I'm going to think of Karl Rove and oil. The oil executives meeting with Chris, the Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright, and they're going to look for some type of commitment and a way forward of what they need to get back in there. Do you think they will?
My gut tells me, in fact, I'm putting this in my column tomorrow on the Wall Street Journal, is I don't think they will until there's a stable Democratic regime. Remember, 20 years ago, this same crowd expropriated the assets of all the American oil companies except Chevron. Chevron is the only U.S. company operating still in Venezuela, and even it operates under the most difficult of circumstances. So you're talking about oil companies. Look, it's not, get yourself a crew and head out to the field and plop a drill down and the big oil comes rolling out. These are expensive billion-dollar engineering projects, and no company that doesn't have assets in Venezuela today is going to spend that kind of money until they have a confidence that over the long haul, those assets are not going to be taken like they did 20 years ago. Even Chevron is there. If you talk to people inside Chevron, they want to get out. They've wanted to get out for years, but it's like, why we can't justify walking away from the capital that we've invested there. We're trying to find a way to maximize our return on that money, but we can't, without doing enormous damage to our company, walk away from what we've done over decades in investing in the country.
But I guess they're hunching it because the stock prices on all those companies, Conoco and Exxon and Chevron, they're all going up. So I think they'll do something, and I think that with 15,000 U.S. military personnel off the shore, they should feel good about getting started at the very least. And the president, I love the fact that he told China and he told the vice president, now the president, to kick out China, Russia, and Iran. So then they got to do it.
Yeah. No, so, they're now under pressure, and let's see how they handle it.
How would Karl Rove handle Greenland?
Look, if the president wants additional U.S. military facilities in Greenland, he can get it by treating Denmark with respect. The idea that Denmark is going to give up Greenland, which has been part of the three kingdoms of Denmark for hundreds of years because Donald Trump threatens the U.S. military, is ridiculous. It is a vital security interest for the entire West to have greater impact and greater influence and greater facilities in the Arctic region. But we can get those without threatening a close friend and longtime ally and trying to become, trying to take their territory. How would we like it if somebody said, well, we want to have Hawaii, or we want to have Alaska, or we want to have Puerto Rico, and we wouldn't like it. And the president could get what he wants without making these threats. And I've seen the comments recently that, oh, yes, what he's really trying to do is he recognizes that he's not going to be able to get Greenland, but he's doing this in order to get leverage over the Danes to give us additional facilities and military outposts. Well, look, they'll be happy to do that if we treat them with respect as allies and compatriots.
Lastly, on Iran, Senator Lindsey Graham, cut 39.
And to the Ayatollahs, you need to understand, if you keep killing your people who are demanding a better life, Donald J. Trump is going to kill you. Change is coming to Iran. It'll be the biggest change in the history of the Mideast to get rid of this Nazi regime. To the people of Iran, help is on the way.
So there is a sense that this is a little bit different because they're falling apart on the inside. So, Senator, what do you bet the senator?
Well, I agree with him that change is on the horizon. The question is, what do the mullahs do? Realize this is not only the unrest that's happening today is starting in the Grand Bazaar in Tehran. This has been where the two previous revolutions have taken place: the revolution that brought the Ayatollahs to power, and the revolution that put the royalist regime in power before that. So this is a conservative part of the country. These are people who should be natural allies of the regime, and instead they are protesting that the economy has been absolutely wrecked. 40% of the people live in extreme poverty. 80% of the people now live in poverty. This used to be one of the most prosperous parts of that part of the world because of their oil wealth. And they're learning, a well-educated population. And so, no, I think change is coming. And the question is going to be how much by the end of this coming year, this year, are the mullahs going to – they got limited tools to solve the economic problem. The only way to solve the economic problem is to have a free society that allows people to have property and to advance their lives by industry and commerce. And this regime is like – in some ways, like Venezuela, they're stealing the money from the people in order to enrich the nomenclatura. In this case, it's the mullahs. In Venezuela, it's the Maduro, regime. The insiders get the money and the people get screwed.
Yeah, the people in Tehran can't even get water, let alone the inflation. Karl Rove, thanks so much. Look forward to your column tomorrow in the Wall Street Journal. Thanks, Karl.
You bet. All the best.
Have I been perfect in this? God dang no. I wasn't perfect as a teacher. I wasn't perfect as a coach. I wasn't perfect as a soldier, but I was pretty damn good at all those things. Game's over for him now. It was all me. I was the bad guy or whatever. Well, put up or shut up now and tell us what you're going to do to make this state better. Answer these tough questions. Quit hiding behind this and expect for the next 11 months for me to ride you like you've never been ridden.
What is he even talking about? Ride what? Ride the media for looking into your fraud and terrible management style? So the media got so bad because one guy does a story over the holidays where the media scrutiny is historically the least. He says, I'm not going to run for re-election, and I won't resign. How dare you ask me to resign? Why? Because you suck as a governor. Now we're finding out you look the other way, or we're hearing some testimony now. People were threatened if they didn't look the other way with pictures of their houses and with their kids, where their kids went to school. So I don't know what's going on with that place that's supposed to be so nice and the governor that's supposed to have such a big heart. Michael LaRosa joins us now. He's a former special assistant to President Biden and chief spokesperson to First Lady Jill Biden and House Democratic leadership in the U.S. Senate as communications director. That's all part of his resume. Michael, welcome back. I just want to bring you a little of the press conference. Monday was an announcement. Tuesday was a press conference. He was so unhinged, blaming racism and Trump. Neither one of those things will fly. What's your take from this?
Yeah, and it wasn't even a press conference. It was a press statement. He didn't even take questions. And if I were a constituent, I wouldn't be too pleased about that. There'd be a lot of questions I would have. He's been doing this from the very beginning, and I've been really disappointed in the governor. I think he's a great guy. I like him personally, but there's been no contrition. There's been no ownership and responsibility. And yesterday, turning this around and trying to blame the president, Trump, it was almost feel like he was disconnected from reality. This is a historic example of fraud, and it's serious. And if it wasn't serious, and if it wasn't a political liability, he would be running for re-election. But he's not, because he has become a little bit toxic. And when you force your allies and your friends and your fellow Democrats to fight on political terrain that they were never planning, they never chose to fight on, they are going to have to absorb his liabilities. And he didn't do himself any favors yesterday. I don't know what he was talking about. I really don't. I want to know about the agencies he oversaw that betrayed the taxpayers that voted for him.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things going on. Governor Gavin Newsom quickly praised him as basically doing a great job. You think he's going to regret that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, look, I don't know if hypocrisy matters anymore in politics these days. It can be overshadowed by personalities and viral moments, but what I don't understand, and I thought we were kind of ready to turn the page into a more radical moment of candor and have tough conversations with each other as a party. We have to be okay with acknowledging mistakes, acknowledging incompetency or neglect, in this case, of programs, by the way, these state welfare programs, like these are the legacy programs of the Democrats' Great Society and the New Deal. And to be so cavalier and neglectful of how we've treated these programs does a disservice. It's disrespectful to the legacy of Roosevelt and Johnson and Clinton and welfare to work and the CHIP program. I mean, we need to be more protective and loyal of the programs that should be protected, and not so much loyal to the executives or the candidates just because they have a D after their name. We need to be able to say they effed up, and we can find another Democrat.
So there's a DA, Ellison, who came out and said, look, I prosecuted that fraud. I got $80 million back. Well, we're talking about between $1 billion and $9 billion. And then one of the groups you took a contribution from. But you're talking about money that should have been going to teach children with autism. You're talking about money to go with people who are challenged economically, who are homeless. You had a food program that was abused by the millions. And now you have good programs that the president says, I'm freezing all the money until we can find out where the fraud is and how to stop it. And it's hurting good programs in the past. For example, Jennifer Larson weighed in last night with Will Cain. And he talked about how her own son has autism, cut 11.
Yeah. I think all of Minnesota is so tired of people not being held accountable. Stepping down is just, it's his way out. This is so ugly and so widespread, and he was so complicit, in my opinion, of course. But I'm more worried about the 30 to 40,000 children if they don't pull this back, this prepayment review, and pay us, that are going to be left, innocent children that are going to be left with no services. The schools can't take them. The schools were the people who said, we can't take you, and discharged them. They'll have nowhere to go. Moms and dads, somebody's going to have to stop working and stay home with these children. Whatever happens to Governor Walz, just leave.
It would be great if he just left, but that's the problem. You're talking about the most vulnerable people who are being abused. Evidently, the Somali families would come up with healthy kids. They'd say, here's the money that's set aside for you. You don't need it, so let's split it. I'll hold it as an organizer. You take half of it for your family. And this went on for years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think since 2015, right?
Yeah. So, Michael, add this. What do you think? What do you think about the fact that he was vetted to be the running mate of Kamala Harris by Eric Holder and his law firm?
Yeah, and look, my former colleague who did our vice presidential vetting, Dana Remus at Coving and Burling, who I love and admire, but they have some. Well, first of all, look, Kamala Harris has a presidential nominee. Their first decision of consequence is their judgment on choosing a nominee. If she had won, and by the way, she to be fair, she lost by a little less than 1.5%. It was a relatively close race in the scheme of things. Had she won, her administration would be engulfed right now in a scandal, in a controversy because of her VP. And say what you want about her, she didn't do that to President Biden. We vetted her. So what happened? What went wrong? And if she doesn't answer these, Sean, because she's made it clear she's still ambitious, she's setting up a PAC, she's clearly motivated to want to run again. If she has learned any lessons from how she communicates and how she reacts to events, I don't understand why she's not not just admonishing Walz, but talking about what we just talked about here, the programs set up by FDR and Clinton and Johnson, these historic programs that as Democrats, we take pride in, that we try to help the vulnerable and the disabled and the sick and the elderly. Well, we are making the Republicans' case for us because of the lack of oversight and mismanagement that occurred in Minnesota. We're just, and I don't understand why she's not putting out a statement about this.
So you think that Kamala Harris should absolutely talk about how disappointed she is?
1,000. This was the only, her judgment is going to be in question forever now. I mean, at least for the next 3 years, because the next time she does an interview could be whenever, right? She's continuing her book tour, right? This month,
I guess.
It was apparently successful, so she decided to do another month of it. This is not going to go away. What actual journalist worth their salt is not going to ask about this? And why should Democrats trust your judgment when you chose a vice president a vice presidential nominee, a running mate who had some serious competency and governing issues?
Remember what a terrible debater he was. Number one, called himself a knucklehead. And I have to agree now. Number two is he wasn't a head coach. He was an assistant coach for a handful of seasons, no legendary coach. Number three, he was in the military, good. But you didn't serve with glory. He overemphasized what he did, and he let people down by not going to Iraq. So with all that there, you can make any judgment you want. I'd go, sorry, Governor, appreciate your support, but I can't have you as a number two. But obviously, she has not said anything yet.
I think there were things like this. Like, look, he comes out of, in a Democrat's world, in what used to be for both parties, right? He came right out of central casting. A teacher, a coach, like the guy next door, a veteran. It was right out of central casting in terms of his background.
I don't think so. I mean, the way he handles himself, his hands going everywhere. I don't know what he was talking about half the time.
Sean, the craziest, Brian, the craziest part to me, the biggest red flag occurred when he got the gig, because he did something gutsy. He went out and campaigned for the job, which Democrats are always told not to do.
Republicans too.
Yeah. So he went out and campaigned for the job. He gets it, shows to prove that he's an effective communicator, that he can throw a punch, that he can attack Trump, that he can go on TV, blah, 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 blah. And what happens when he gets there? He does nothing. They muzzle him. They literally chopped his balls off as soon as he got there. And you're just going to listen to the people, the same Biden advisors and Harris advisors who did them no favors in PR over the last 4 years?
Oh, yeah. I want to get you two more things. I saw over the weekend, you saw the Venezuela and what the president did with Maduro. He's now in a jail cell after appearing in court of Manhattan. He's in a jail cell in Brooklyn. So right away when this happened, Ben Rhodes, former Obama National Security Advisor, puts out on Twitter, on X, a regime change in Latin America based on absurd rationales about drug trafficking, no explanation of goals, and counter to everything Trump promised on the campaign trail, and we're not even a full year into the Trump term. And you write back, give me a break. How many innocent civilians did Obama kill with drone attacks in Libya, Somalia, Yemen, and Syria? When Democrats controlled the House and Senate in 89, no one argued that Bush didn't have the authority to capture Noriega and send him to Miami. Let's not forget Obama's surge of force in Afghanistan after campaigning on ending dumb wars and attacking Hillary for lacking the judgment to be president because she voted for the Iraq war authorization. Meanwhile, Obama tapped a VP and two secretaries of state who supported the same resolutions. The Obama crowd should sit this one out, especially when it comes to breaking campaign promises. But let the weak and woke progressive pearl clutching begin. What's been the response to your response to Ben Rhodes? I love what you wrote, by the way.
Because keep it mixed, like, again, Democrats don't like when you say the quiet parts out loud or even the obvious parts. I mean, but how can we just not stand for anything? Obama didn't get permission to launch strikes into Libya and Pakistan and Yemen. He got, at one point, he got a UN a resolution. Well, big deal. That was, first of all, at the time, people thought, like, that is not congressional authorization. That is not the kind of authorization people have in mind. But he ignored Congress. They did everything that all presidents have been doing, frankly, except here's the difference. In Panama, in Grenada, in Kosovo, those presidents who sent troops in or the airstrikes, we knew, first of all, we owned the aftermath. We stayed around in Panama and Grenada and Kosovo. We made sure that the peace was kept and that rule of law was restored and that we transitioned the government when it was ready and governable. But that is not what they did. And he put domestic politics, Obama put domestic politics ahead of the people of Libya and we just took Gaddafi out and left.
Yeah, and he said that's his biggest regret of his presidency too. So I want to talk about New York.
And the Obama people just don't have any room to stand on right now. Sorry.
So Dan Goldman is considered I think as liberal as any Democrat. I mean, I haven't seen any moderate or conservative elements about his service. And then you have him going against this guy named Brad Lander. Now, why am I bringing to a New York race? Because Brad Lander is being backed by Zohran Mamdani to knock off a fellow Democrat in his district, a sitting congressman, backing Goldman or Governor Hochul and Hakeem Jeffries. This is an example of how the socialist wing of the party is going to war with not even people that are moderate. And there's some moderates in New York, moderate Democrats. You're going after a outspoken liberal Democrat. Can you make sense of that, Michael LaRosa?
No, I can't make sense of it. I don't get. I mean, Dan Goldman, like, he's been on the front lines of trying to impeach Trump and fight Trump, and by all standards, a progressive Democrat, a leftward Democrat, not necessarily. Now, you wouldn't call Dan Goldman a moderate. I just don't get it. But
you have a socialist. You have a socialist which just wants socialists there. This is not something Mike LaRosa talks about. You're not against home ownership, are you?
No. I mean, I don't get it. But it's going to be a problem because you're seeing it. You're seeing these. There's a lot of primaries right now that are under the radar, and they're going to get excited to see because they're congressional districts where a lot of them are actually safe Democratic seats.
Right.
But they have these fault lines and these microcosms of what you're seeing in New York in some of these congressional races in the suburbs.
Right.
And it's going to be interesting to watch over the next couple of months because they're going to start. And look, I said yesterday, I'm a Goldman Democrat at this point.
Michael LaRosa, I just wish he was stronger for Israel. Michael LaRosa, thanks so much.
I insist upon the constitutional command that we shouldn't be using the U.S. military in hostilities, except for self-defense from an attack, without a vote of Congress. And I insisted upon that with Presidents Obama and Biden and also with President Trump. I view the attack on Venezuela as illegal.
Thank you, Senator Kaine. Totally inaccurate, not illegal. You can take executive action, especially on an indicted criminal who we had a $20 million bounty on his head under Biden. It went up to 40 under this president. So why he says stuff that he knows is blatantly untrue? Because it's in the partisan, even though we got 11 months until an election, they're still in the partisan mode. Senator Markwayne Mullin joins us now, Armed Services and Appropriations Committee. I know there's just been a briefing, a committee, and one of the committees was just briefed by Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War. Have you gotten yours yet, Senator?
Yes, I actually just walked out of that briefing. It was you did? Okay. Chairman Kaine, Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff. You had Director John Ratcliffe there. You had Pam Bondi, Secretary Rubio, and Secretary Hegseth. And Brian, let me tell you, that was the best briefing, classified briefing, that I've ever been part of. And I mean that sincerely. I've sat through hundreds of classified briefings. I've already been briefed on this one previous time, but not quite in depth. Any Democrat that walks out of that and says they were disappointed in the briefing, that says they're not proud of what the American intelligence community and the American military did, they're going to flat be lying to the American people. It was phenomenal, and we should be very proud that we brought this guy to justice. That was, by the way, Maduro was indicted almost 6 years ago for poisoning and killing Americans. In 2024, we lost more Americans to drug overdoses than we did U.S. personnel in the Vietnam War. We had a war going on in our streets, and the main guy that was sponsoring it, that was allowing these cartels to have a safe haven in his illegitimate, I wouldn't say illegitimate country, but in his illegitimate position to be the dictator over Venezuela, we brought him to the U.S. and is holding him accountable. That is great, Brian.
Yeah, so what is the school of thought? What they tell you about the transition? Now that we're a few days into it, Delcy Rodriguez, the vice president, came out defiant. I want a proof of life. I want Maduro back. And then she changed. From the time I ended my show at 10 o'clock Sunday till I got up to Fox and Friends, there was a new statement. And the statement said, we're here to essentially to work with the United States the best we can. And now we have this cooperation on oil and gas because they can't sell it. They can't refine it. They're all backed up. They have nowhere even to store it. There's no tankers there. We just caught 2 other tankers. But what's your sense about Delcy Rodriguez's ability to run that country differently than Maduro?
Well, she is no friend of ours, and I doubt very seriously when they have elections that she'll be elected to run the country. But this was never about regime change. This was a law enforcement activity that was to bring Maduro to hold him accountable for his behavior. Now, what we have, though, is we have a strong leverage now of this oil. Remember, this oil's been sold on the market at a huge discount. I mean, just China alone was taking roughly 400,000 barrels a day. You have Cuba, that they were 100% reliant on Venezuela oil, which is why you had a security force there that was protecting Maduro, which obviously a lot of them lost their life doing so. And so the leverage point we have now, excuse me, Brian, is the ability to sell this oil for Venezuela at an open market price instead of a discount price and become and help them pay their bills, pay the military, pay the law enforcement, pay sanitarian workers, and keep their lights on, essentially. So we want to work with the Venezuela people to allow them to have an opportunity to choose their next government. And right now, that person we got to work with, well, she's not a friend, but she has to work with us because she has no choice, because in a few days, they run out of money.
Right. So and I know it's never easy when the president is taken out of his bed, justifiably, and put into a prison in Brooklyn. But I understand this Interior Secretary Cabello is as bad as it gets, walks around with spikes in his bat, has everyone scared to death, and you got motorcycle gangs going up and down the streets, making sure there's no Trump supporters out there and nothing but Maduro supporters. Did they address that at all, about how we don't get messed up in this Iraq style, but we somehow provide some type of semblance of freedom to the people?
Yeah, I've got to be pretty vague on this because this was classified, and until it's declassified or it becomes open source, but I don't want to be the person that causes it to be open source. I will tell you we're working with people inside Venezuela to make sure that the democracy is restored, that there is some type of structure there, which is why you saw the statement that changed in less than 12 hours.
Yeah.
So there is a coordinated effort to bring stability there. Now we have no boots on the ground, zero. We pulled everybody that went in. Every single person came out, and our assets came out as well. So. But that doesn't mean that we don't have contingency plans. But I don't think what we're seeing as of right now, Brian, isn't a reason to deploy a contingency plan. Right now, what we're seeing is a country that is stabilizing after 25 years of dictatorship, and they're finding their footing, and they're going to find out the United States is a friend. Where all the oil that is coming out of Venezuela that was being sold on an illegal market, and that wasn't going to the Venezuelan people. We are now going to control that. Not $1 is going to be deposited into the U.S. Treasury. It's going to be used to go back into Venezuela to allow them to become the great nation that they used to be. And I think the Venezuela people, home and abroad, are excited about what's happening and the opportunity for them.
So, Senator, and I don't know what I don't know. So if there's something else you want to relay to the audience that I'm not asking, that you think that's unclassified, please let me know. But I would like to ask you this. About an hour ago, they announced that the U.S. has seized 2 tankers, one under a Russian flag. The Russians, I heard, were escorting this ship with submarines. But when we actually boarded it and took it, even though they asked us not to, and who are they to tell us not to? They reflagged it mid-journey, and we just took it anyway. So could you tell us anything about that as a member of Armed Services?
We did take that ship. They claimed it was theirs. It was not. It was illegally flagged. As far as the escorts, that is That's inaccurate. I'm trying to be as close to it as I can be. They did threaten something to that nature, but listen, this is the Western Hemisphere. This is the Western Hemisphere of Americas, right? And we're the power in the ocean, and we will protect our backyard. We've made it very clear that there's not going to be one drop of oil that goes into Venezuela or leaves Venezuela. And everything that does, we're going to take control of it, and then we're going to work with them. Like I said, this isn't to be deposited inside the U.S. Treasury. This every drop of oil we take right now under the sanctions that we have them under in a blockade will be deposited, be sold on our open market, be deposited in a separate account, and be written in checks back to Venezuela government to stand that country back up from the years of theft that the Maduro regime had taken from the people and the great nation. I mean, honestly, I don't know if you've ever been to Venezuela.
I have not.
But it is a beautiful. I mean, it is a beautiful country and beautiful people have a tremendous amount of pride in their country that has been robbed from them from the Maduro regime, and we are there to give them the opportunity to take back their country.
And don't forget Guyana right next door. Then Maduro was threatening to take that, by the way. We made sure that didn't happen. So we also know that they had a huge oil discovery too, which is going to benefit everybody in the region. Are we going to get our prisoners out? We understand that Venezuela has some prisoners. Is there a plan for that?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't go into it, Brian.
Good.
But yes,
yes, understood.
Absolutely, there is a plan for that, and the president is very good about going and getting Americans all across the world. I mean, you saw that the Biden administration, they paid huge amounts of money and traded a doctor of death for a WNBA player. And that has caused tremendous amount of destabilization because the guy's back at work doing what he used to do, and what we saw with President Trump is they're released because of the president's ability to negotiate, and right now we don't have to negotiate. We know those prisoners are coming home.
Senator, did they go over Cuba at all in the briefing?
Not really. They talked a little bit about Colombia and Cuba. Cuba was just the fact that Venezuela was propping up Cuba, and they know that. And Cuba is in an interesting, peculiar situation, but not militarily wise, not details or anything like that. Talked about Cuba or Colombia a little bit. That's not the same. Venezuela is not the same as Colombia. I mean, yes, there's a loudmouth elected president that's in Colombia. But we still have, and we've continued to have, good working relationships with Colombia, and ever since we helped them come out of literally the civil war that they were in with the drug cartels that were operating and taking that country by storm. We've always maintained very good relationships with Colombia. So the rhetoric coming out of the new president there isn't really that big of a concern to ours.
So Cuba, we understand, this is the worst crisis in their 67-year communist history. They have they have ration cards, but no rations to hand out. No electricity for an average between 15 and 20 hours a day. They have skyrocketing inflation. Eggs cost $8. They get pensions on the average of $7 a month. So there's no way this guy, I mean, this country or this island can survive under this regime. So I just think we all should brace ourselves for just a collapse, almost a collapse of that country. The other thing we're looking at is massive protests for 10 straight days in Iran. And we have nothing to do with it. They earned all of this unrest with the lack of water, inflation through the roof, billions going to Hamas and Hezbollah instead of to their own country. I'm getting the sense, and I talked to some people this morning, that this is this is unrest like we have not seen. And you talk about problems rippling through the region. Think about the militias. If something happens to that regime, the militias that will not get serviced in Iraq. Think about Hezbollah and Hamas who won't get billions. Think about the Houthis that will be cut off from arms if the Ayatollahs fall. I'm sure this has been thought through.
Yeah, there's a big picture that you got to be looking at this. Yes, Cuba is a failed state, but this is what happens when socialism takes over a free nation. We know socialism does not work. And you can say a regime in Iran is real close to what's been happening in Cuba. You know, different religious backgrounds, but it's the same type of dictatorship. You saw what's happened in Venezuela. So Venezuela's collapsed. Cuba's collapsing. Iran remember, Iran used to be a huge partner of ours in the 60s and 70s. Businesses were openly operating there. Iran was considered one of our close friends in the region. And ever since the Shah was overthrown in 79, now you're seeing this regime finally start to collapse. It's interesting because the time frames are close to the same. But what people aren't talking about is what's happened to China because of it. Keep in mind, 400,000 barrels a day from Venezuela was propping up China, and they were buying it cheap on a discount price. Iran, there was even more oil coming out of Iran. Now, because of the unrest, they're not able to get the shipment to China. China only has about 90 days of supply of reserves in oil. And when you take Venezuela off the market and you take Iran off the market, and now you have in Russia that they're having to be dependent on, and that's getting very difficult, that backup could be roughly 45 days. So you're going to see a behavior change in China too, because they're going to have to go back to the open market instead of buying it at a 25 to 35% discount from the open market. Now they've got to absorb that into their economy, and their economy is trickling. So you see dictatorships, socialism, communism all around the world right now becoming very disabled because it doesn't work, which is why it's ridiculous that you have Democrats now that are trying to push socialism like Mendami in New York. I mean, because we see that it fails. And when one crumbles, they all begin to crumble.
Senator, can't thank you enough. Just a fountain of information, a lot of breaking news today. Last question to you is the president's message and the game plan at the midterms. Can you give me three things that Republicans are all on the same page that they're going to look to target to get their message out for the midterms?
Well, we're talking about the kitchen table. It's all about the kitchen table. It's about actually getting health care to work for the American people rather than unaffordable health care that has been absolutely a failed experiment by the Democrats. We're talking about bringing down the cost of groceries, because when our economy grows, inflation comes down. That's why we've seen inflation go from a high of 9.1% under the Biden administration to around 2.4%. We expect interest rates to drop. And then it's about energy. If you bring down energy costs, you're also going to bring down the quality of life for the American people. So if you do those, that's because the economy's coming, we're creating jobs. We've got to stay focused on that. What we do, the Trump's economy works for the American people. And you have to ask, are we better off today than we were before President Trump was in office? The answer to that is absolutely. Are we a safer nation? Absolutely. Do we have our borders secured? Absolutely. Right. Do people around the world respect us? Absolutely. And it's all because the American people chose to put the Republicans in office, and that's what we got to stay focused on.
And Senator, I'm looking right now to get you into the octagon for the UFC fight at the White House. So we're looking at a few opponents, and we'll have you sign off on that. Is that all right?
Yeah, I want to sign off on them because they got to be very unskilled. Because in order for me to come out of retirement, it's going to have to take somebody that's got less skill than me or no time in the ring.
We'll see, Senator. I'm going to find out. I'm pretty sure you can handle yourself. Senator Markwayne Mullin, thanks so much.